How often has a fleeting emotion derailed your entire day? How many times have you snapped in anger, only to regret it later? How many doors have you let fear, doubt, or frustration slam shut? If your emotions run wild, you're not steering your life. Something or someone else is. Most people don't think, they react. A harsh word sours their mood, a single stumble convinces them they're worthless, and fleeting feelings dictate choices they can't take back. Each time, they hand over their power. The strongest aren't those who feel nothing. They're the ones who refuse to be slaves to what they feel. The Stoics knew this centuries before science caught up. Marcus Aurelius saw anger as a crack in the soul. Epictetus taught that pain comes not from events but our responses. And Seneca warned that unchecked emotions chain men like prisoners. Here's the raw truth. Emotions don't own you. You let them. The second you stop pointing fingers at the world, at others, or at your own nature and start owning your reactions, you claim real power. You become unbreakable. You transform into someone who carves their own path, not a puppet tossed by life's chaos. In this video, you'll uncover 11 Stoic lessons to master your emotions, stay steady under fire, and command any moment with an iron will. No more outbursts, no more regrets, no more captivity to your own mind. Ready to seize control? Drop "Master Your Emotions" in the comments if you're done letting feelings call the shots. Like, share, and subscribe to Victory Stoic, because true strength begins with ruling yourself. Let's dive in. Number 1. Understand what's in your control. The foundation of emotional mastery. You wake up to heavy traffic and your frustration spikes. A coworker makes a snide remark and your mood crashes. The stock market takes a dip and suddenly panic sets in. You feel powerless, tossed around by external events that dictate your emotions like a puppet on strings. But what if I told you that the chaos around you was never the problem, only your reaction to it? Most people live in reaction mode. They get angry when things don't go their way, stressed when plans fall apart, and anxious over outcomes they have zero control over. The Stoics understood this flaw centuries ago and gave us one of the most powerful mental frameworks ever created: the dichotomy of control. Simply put, there are only two types of things in life. Things you can control and things you cannot. And the moment you learn to distinguish between the two, you unlock a level of emotional freedom that most people will never experience. The story of James, a tale of two mindsets. Take James, a talented entrepreneur who poured his heart and soul into launching his first business. He did everything right: market research, product testing, networking. But then, the economy took a downturn. Sales dropped. Investors backed out. His dream was slipping through his fingers. He spent hours obsessing over what went wrong, blaming external circumstances, and complaining about the unfairness of it all. The result? He wasted valuable time dwelling on things he had no power over. Meanwhile, his competitor Daniel faced the same economic downturn, but he reacted differently. Instead of wasting energy on things he couldn't change, he focused only on what he could, pivoting his business strategy, cutting unnecessary costs, and seeking new market opportunities. While James drowned in stress, Daniel adapted, adjusted, and ultimately thrived. The difference between James and Daniel wasn't intelligence, luck, or experience. It was understanding control. James fought against reality, resisting what he couldn't change, while Daniel accepted it and focused on what he could. This is the core principle of Stoic resilience, the science behind control and anxiety. Modern psychology backs up what the Stoics taught. Studies show that people who dwell on uncontrollable events suffer from higher levels of anxiety and depression. The American Psychological Association found that people who focus on controllable actions rather than uncontrollable circumstances report lower stress levels, increased resilience, and higher overall life satisfaction. When you constantly worry about things beyond your influence, what people think of you, political turmoil, the past, you are actively draining mental energy that could be used for actual progress. Your brain is a battery. Do you want to waste its charge on things you can't fix, or use it to improve what you can? A powerful Stoic quote for perspective. Most people have heard, "Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference." But let's go deeper with a lesser-known quote from Epictetus. Freedom is the ability to control your own mind. If you are disturbed by anything external, it is not the thing itself that troubles you, but your judgment about it. And this judgment is within your control. Let that sink in. Nothing outside you has the power to disturb you, only your interpretation of it does. Your mind, not the world, determines your emotional state. How to apply this in real life? So how do you start controlling your emotions using this principle? 1. Every time you feel stressed, ask yourself, is this within my control? If yes, take action. If no, let it go. 2. Reframe negative situations. Instead of thinking this shouldn't be happening, shift to this is happening. What can I do about it? 3. Stop fighting reality. The weather, traffic, the past, people's opinions, none of these are yours to control. Free yourself from the illusion that they are. James stayed stuck in his emotions because he resisted reality. Daniel rose above them because he accepted reality and worked within it. Which one are you? If you take nothing else from this lesson, remember, control what you can, accept what you can't, and master your emotions in the process. Number 2. Frustration is just powerlessness in disguise. You're standing in line at the coffee shop, already late for work. The person in front of you is taking forever, asking about different milk alternatives as if they're making a life or death decision. Your fists clench, your jaw tightens. You want to scream, just pick one and move. Or maybe it's your coworker taking credit for your ideas in a meeting. You sit there, fuming, feeling your blood pressure rise. Or the driver in front of you, crawling under the speed limit while you're in a rush. Or your partner, who still hasn't texted back even though they were active on social media. What do all these situations have in common? You feel powerless. Frustration isn't just anger. It's the mind's way of saying, I want control, but I don't have it. And the more powerless you feel, the more intense your frustration becomes. But here's the paradox. The more you let frustration control you, the weaker you actually become. The psychology of frustration. Why powerless people get angry. Psychologists have studied frustration for decades, and one key truth emerges. It is a direct response to helplessness. When people feel unable to change a situation, they often react with irritation, impatience, or even rage. Not because these emotions fix anything, but because they provide a temporary illusion of control. In 1948, psychologist B.F. Skinner conducted an experiment with pigeons. He randomly rewarded them with food, regardless of what they did. The pigeons, unable to predict or control the outcome, started engaging in irrational behaviors, flapping their wings or spinning in circles, desperately trying to influence something they had no power over. Humans do the same. We get angry, we complain, we lash out, all in an attempt to control the uncontrollable. But here's the truth. No amount of frustration has ever solved anything. If complaining worked, we'd all be millionaires. If road rage changed traffic, we'd all be speeding down empty highways. Frustration is nothing more than wasted energy, a reaction to a reality we refuse to accept. The 2 types of frustration, which one are you? There are 2 types of people when faced with frustration. 1, the screamer. They yell, they punch walls, they snap at others. They think their reaction is a display of strength, but in reality, it's a sign of total weakness. They are not in control, their emotions are. 2, the strategist. They pause. They recognize that frustration is just a signal, a message that something is out of their hands. Instead of wasting energy, they shift their focus to what they can control. Take Jake and Daniel. Both were in the same situation, working hard at a company, expecting a promotion. When their boss promoted someone else instead, Jake exploded. He ranted to coworkers, complained about how unfair life was, and let the bitterness poison his motivation. His frustration changed nothing, except making him look unprofessional. Daniel, on the other hand, swallowed his frustration and asked himself, what now? He started improving his skills, networking, and eventually got a better offer elsewhere. While Jake stayed stuck, Daniel moved forward. Same frustration, different outcome. The Stoic approach, how to master your emotions instead of being ruled by them. Marcus Aurelius understood this problem centuries ago. He wrote, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. What does this mean? It means that every time you feel frustration creeping in, you have 2 choices. 1, waste your energy fighting what you can't change. 2, channel that energy into something productive. If traffic is bad, use the time to listen to an audiobook instead of punching the steering wheel. If someone insults you, smile and walk away instead of giving them free rent in your mind. If life is unfair, adapt and overcome instead of screaming at the sky. Frustration is weakness, calm is power. The next time you feel frustration rising, stop and ask yourself, is my reaction making me stronger or weaker? If it's making you weaker, drop it. Move forward. Control what you can. Let go of what you can't. Because at the end of the day, frustration is just powerlessness in disguise. And you are not powerless unless you choose to be. Number 3, reflect first, react later. Why you feel the way you do. Something happens, a rude comment, a setback, a piece of unexpected bad news. Instantly, you feel anger, frustration, disappointment, or even panic. Before you can think, you react, snapping at someone, making an impulsive decision, or letting negativity spiral out of control. And then, once the damage is done, once the words are said, once the consequences unfold, you finally stop and wonder, why did I react like that? But by then, it's too late. This is how most people live, on autopilot, reacting before reflecting, letting their emotions dictate their actions, rather than questioning where those emotions come from. But here's the truth. Emotions don't just happen to you. They are triggered by your interpretation of events, not the events themselves. If you don't stop to understand why you feel a certain way before you react, you are not in control of yourself. You are merely a puppet, pulled by strings you don't even see. Take David, for example. He was waiting for an important email from his boss. Hours passed. Nothing. Then, at 5 p.m., he saw that his boss had emailed other team members but not him. His stomach tightened. Did I do something wrong? Am I being left out? Is this a sign that I'm about to get fired? Anger and anxiety built up. Before thinking, he sent a curt email asking if there was a problem. Later that night, he got a response. "Oh, sorry, David. I was planning to loop you in tomorrow once we finalized everything." His reaction had been completely unnecessary, based on an assumption, not reality. This is the mistake nearly everyone makes. Instead of reflecting first, they react immediately. Instead of asking, why do I feel this way? They assume their first emotional response is the truth. But it rarely is. The Stoics understood this better than anyone. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Strength doesn't come from reacting quickly. It comes from responding correctly. Modern psychology confirms why reflection must come before reaction. Neuroscientists have found that emotional impulses originate in the amygdala, the part of the brain responsible for fight or flight responses. When you react immediately, you are letting the most primitive part of your brain control you. However, when you take a moment to pause and reflect, your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for rational thought, takes over. This is what separates impulsive people from those who remain calm under pressure. The ability to delay reaction until reflection has occurred. So how do you train yourself to reflect first? Step 1. Pause. Before saying anything, before taking any action, before letting an emotion hijack your judgment, take a deep breath. Give yourself at least 5 seconds. The initial emotional wave will weaken. Step 2. Question your emotion. Ask yourself, why do I feel this way? Is this reaction logical or just habitual? Am I making assumptions or do I have real facts? Just this level of questioning is enough to break the cycle of instant, thoughtless reactions. Step 3. Reframe. If your first interpretation of an event is negative, force yourself to find an alternative. If someone ignores your text, instead of thinking, they don't respect me, consider, maybe they're busy. If a plan falls apart, instead of this is a disaster, try, what can I do now? David eventually trained himself to reflect before reacting. The next time he was left out of an email, he didn't assume the worst. Instead, he asked himself, do I have actual evidence that this is a problem, or am I just feeling insecure? He chose to wait before responding. The next day, he was included in the discussion, no unnecessary confrontation, no anxiety. He had saved himself from stress simply by pausing and thinking. Emotions are not the problem, unquestioned emotions are. If you react to every feeling without understanding it, you are not in control of yourself. Reflection must always come before reaction. The next time you feel the urge to lash out, to assume the worst, to let frustration dictate your actions, ask yourself one thing first. Why do I feel this way? the answer will change everything. Number 4. Practicing silence as a tool of power. A fool argues. A wise person observes. The one who talks the most often has the least control. The one who stays silent holds all the power. People today are obsessed with being heard. They argue over nonsense, rush to defend their opinions, and react to every slight as if their reputation depends on it. They don't realize that the loudest person in the room is rarely the strongest. Strength isn't in the words you throw at others. It's in the silence you choose to keep. Meet Lucas, a man who never learned this lesson. He felt the need to correct every misunderstanding, challenge every criticism, and respond to every insult. If someone questioned his decisions at work, he argued. If someone made a sarcastic remark, he fired back. He believed that if he didn't speak up, people would think he was weak. What he didn't realize was that his constant need to engage made him predictable. Easily manipulated, easily provoked. His emotions were on display for everyone to poke at. Then there was Daniel, who understood the power of silence. When someone challenged him, he didn't rush to defend himself. He let the other person talk. When others gossiped, he remained neutral. When insulted, he gave nothing back. He knew that most arguments weren't worth his energy. He understood that the person who controls the conversation isn't the one who talks the most. It's the one who speaks the least, but with purpose. Marcus Aurelius knew this well. He once wrote, "Silence is the best reply to an insult." Why? Because responding means you've let someone pull you into their game. A game where they set the rules, where they dictate your emotions, where you react exactly as they hoped. But when you remain silent, you deny them control. People mistake silence for weakness. But look at the most powerful figures in history. The great generals, the successful leaders, the masters of negotiation. They never wasted words. They let others reveal their thoughts first. They let enemies overextend themselves. They listened, observed, and only spoke when it truly mattered. Silence isn't avoidance, it's strategy. So how do you apply this? First, resist the urge to respond to everything. If someone criticizes you, consider, is this worth my time? Will arguing change anything? If the answer is no, stay silent. Second, let others talk first. In negotiations, in debates, in conflicts, whoever speaks first often loses. Silence forces others to reveal more than they intended. Third, speak with precision. When you do speak, make sure every word carries weight. A person who talks too much is ignored. A person who speaks rarely is remembered. Lucas kept talking. Daniel kept winning. One fought to prove himself. The other let his silence command respect. The question is, do you want to be heard for the sake of noise, or do you want your words to actually mean something? Number 5. No one can hurt you unless you let them. Words just sounds shaped by the tongue, carried by the air, gone in an instant. And yet, people let them ruin their day, crush their confidence, and control their emotions. Someone insults you, and suddenly your mood shifts. A stranger mocks you online, and now your entire self-worth is questioned. A friend betrays you, and you spiral into self-doubt. But here's the truth. No one can hurt you unless you give them permission. Epictetus put it best. If someone speaks ill of you, ask yourself, is it true? If it is, correct yourself. If it is not, why be upset? Yet most people do the opposite. They react emotionally, instantly, blindly. They let others dictate their feelings. They take every insult as an attack, every criticism as a wound. They don't realize that pain doesn't come from words. It comes from your attachment to those words. Take Robert, for example. A rising entrepreneur, confident and capable, but easily triggered by criticism. If someone doubted his abilities, he felt compelled to argue. If a client rejected his ideas, he took it personally. He wasted energy defending himself, proving himself, fighting battles that didn't need to be fought. Every negative word left a mark, because he allowed it to. Then there was Michael, who understood the lesson of Stoicism. When people spoke against him, he analyzed, not reacted. If someone insulted his work, he asked, is there truth in this? If yes, he improved. If not, he moved on. He knew that an insult only lands if you accept it. By refusing to engage, by refusing to let others dictate his emotional state, he remained untouchable. What can you do? First, pause before reacting. When someone insults you, before letting anger take over, ask, does this actually change my value? Second, consider the source. Is this person's opinion truly important? If not, discard it. Third, remember your power. No one's words define you unless you allow them to. Robert kept fighting shadows. Michael kept building. The weak seek validation. The strong remain unmoved. So, do you want to be controlled by words, or do you want to rise above them? Number 6. Never argue with fools or the hot-tempered. You can't win a fight in the mud. Imagine walking through a quiet street when suddenly you spot a man furiously arguing with a lamppost. He's red-faced, flailing his arms, shouting insults at an object that by its very nature does not care. Now imagine walking up to this man and saying, "Excuse me, sir, but I believe you are mistaken. This lamppost has no ill will towards you." What do you think would happen? Would he suddenly see the logic in your words, shake your hand, and thank you for enlightening him? No. He would simply redirect his fury toward you. And now, instead of one fool screaming at a lamppost, there are two. Arguing with fools or hot-tempered people is no different. You step into their chaos, thinking logic and reason will rescue them from their ignorance. But in reality, all you've done is smear yourself in their stupidity. You can't win a wrestling match against a pig. The pig enjoys it, and you just end up covered in mud. Marcus Aurelius didn't waste his breath on fools. He once said, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." What does that mean? It means that when someone drags you into a senseless argument, you've already lost because you've allowed them to control your emotions. Fools argue not to learn, but to dominate, to provoke, to feed their fragile egos. The moment you engage, you become their entertainment. Consider Daniel, a man who learned this lesson the hard way. At work, he had a colleague, Frank, who was an expert in the art of nonsense. Frank had an opinion on everything, none of which were backed by logic, experience, or even a basic understanding of reality. But he was loud, confident, and utterly convinced that he was always right. One day, Frank claimed that the stock market was controlled by a secret society of squirrels. Daniel, a rational man, decided to correct him. He brought out data, historical trends, expert opinions, and what did Frank do? He laughed, doubled down, and dragged the argument into even deeper absurdity. After 30 minutes of debate, Daniel walked away frustrated, while Frank strutted around as if he had won. Why? Because he had achieved what he wanted, not truth, but attention. So, how do you win against a fool? You don't. You disengage, you walk away. You let them have their victory in their own delusion. Because silence is not surrender, it's strategy. A wise person knows that energy is limited, and spending it on a lost cause is the real defeat. Next time someone baits you into an argument, ask yourself, do I want to prove a point, or do I want to keep my sanity? Daniel learned his lesson. The next time Frank started ranting about how the moon landing was faked by lizard people, Daniel simply nodded and said, "Interesting theory." Then he turned back to his work. No frustration, no wasted energy, no mud on his hands. Frank moved on to find another victim. There is no shame in walking away from stupidity. The real shame is lowering yourself to fight on its level. So the next time a fool challenges you to battle, remember, let them argue with the lamppost. Number 7, stop letting people rent space in your head for free. At some point, someone insulted you and you let it ruin your day. Someone else praised you and suddenly you felt unstoppable. One random comment lifted you, another crushed you. You were on top of the world in the morning and questioning your entire existence by noon. Why? Because your self-worth is still on the market, up for grabs by anyone with an opinion. You wouldn't let a stranger walk into your house, throw garbage everywhere, and then leave without consequence. So why do you let them do it to your mind? Why does someone's offhand remark have the power to dictate how you feel about yourself? Here's the truth. Self-respect is an inside job. If you let the world decide your value, be prepared for a lifetime of insecurity, because public opinion is the most unstable currency in existence. One day you're admired, the next you're ignored. One moment you're brilliant, the next you're an idiot. And the only way to escape this roller coaster is to get off the ride entirely. Marcus Aurelius said, "We all love ourselves more than other people, but we care about their opinions more than our own." Think about that. You know your effort, your struggles, and your growth better than anyone. Yet a single sentence from someone who barely knows you can shake your confidence. Does that make sense? Of course not. But most people live this way, outsourcing their self-esteem to whoever happens to be speaking the loudest that day. Take Brian, a young architect. When a client praised his work, he felt like a genius. When another criticized it, he felt like a fraud. His emotions were at the mercy of whoever spoke last. Then he met an older, more experienced architect who gave him a brutal truth. If a single compliment can inflate you, a single insult can destroy you. Stop being controlled. That was the moment Brian stopped living for applause and started living by his own standards. So how do you fix this? Step 1. Stop treating praise as fuel. If you rely on approval to feel worthy, you'll always be dependent on it. Step 2. Develop an internal scorecard. Instead of asking, do they think I'm good enough? Ask, did I show up as my best today? Step 3. Let people talk, but don't let their words own you. They will praise, they will criticize, they will forget about you 5 minutes later. Meanwhile, you're still here, building, growing, living. So why let them decide how you feel? People will always have opinions. The only question is, will you let them own you, or will you finally take yourself off the market? Number 8. You can't escape pain, but you can decide what to do with it. A blacksmith doesn't fear fire, he uses it. He doesn't complain that the metal is too hard or the flames are too hot. He understands that only through heat and pressure can the blade be sharpened. Life works the same way. Pain is inevitable, but whether it destroys you or refines you depends on how you face it. Most people, when faced with pain, do everything in their power to avoid it. They distract themselves, numb themselves, or pretend it doesn't exist. But the truth is, pain doesn't disappear just because you ignore it. It waits, festers, and often returns even stronger. Seneca understood this when he said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." The anticipation of pain, the stories we tell ourselves about how unbearable it will be, those are often worse than the actual experience. Think about Jason, a man who had his heart broken. Instead of facing it, he drowned himself in distractions, drinking, meaningless relationships, endless scrolling on his phone. He told himself he was moving on, but really he was running. And yet, no matter how fast he ran, the pain remained. Then there was Marcus, who faced the same situation but chose differently. He sat with his pain. He let himself feel it, process it, and then used it as fuel, hitting the gym harder, focusing on his goals, sharpening his mind. While Jason avoided the fire and stayed weak, Marcus walked through it and emerged stronger. You can't negotiate with pain, you can't escape it, but you can choose how you react to it. First, stop resisting. The more you fight against hardship, the worse it becomes. Second, treat pain as a teacher. What lesson is it giving you? What can you learn? Third, act. Pain becomes suffering only when you stand still. If you keep moving, it turns into growth. So ask yourself, will you let pain control you, or will you forge yourself into something greater? The fire isn't going away. The only question is, will it consume you or will it make you stronger? Number 9. Fear is just a hallucination of the mind. Fear is a master illusionist. It whispers worst-case scenarios in your ear, paints catastrophic endings that never happen, and keeps you frozen while life moves forward without you. It convinces you that failure is unbearable, rejection is humiliating, and uncertainty is dangerous. But the truth? Fear is rarely about reality. It's about the stories you tell yourself. The fear that never comes true. Think about all the times fear has held you back. The job you didn't apply for because you were afraid of rejection. The conversation you avoided because you feared confrontation. The opportunity you let pass because you feared failure. Now ask yourself, how many of those fears actually came true? Studies in psychology show that 85% of the things we worry about never happen. And for the 15% that do, most people realize they handled the situation far better than they expected. This means that most of your fears are nothing more than distorted predictions, fueled by emotions, not facts. The man who let fear decide his life. Take Adam, a man who lived cautiously. He never took risks, never put himself in situations where he could fail. Never stepped outside his comfort zone. He told himself he was playing it safe. In reality, he was a prisoner of his own mind. Every time he thought about trying something new, fear convinced him otherwise. What if you embarrass yourself? What if people laugh at you? What if you fail? Meanwhile, his friend Daniel had the same fears, but he acted anyway. He applied for jobs he wasn't sure he'd get. He started a side business despite the risk. He asked out the person he liked, even though he feared rejection. And as expected, sometimes he failed. But every failure made him stronger. Every rejection built resilience. Every mistake taught him something new. And while Adam stayed stuck in his self-made prison, Daniel moved forward. Fear be damned. The Stoic approach: see fear for what it is. Marcus Aurelius understood this when he wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." Fear is not reality. It's a projection, a distorted illusion of what might happen, not what will happen. The moment you see fear for what it truly is, a liar, it loses its grip on you. How to stop letting fear control you. 1. Fact-check your fears. When fear creeps in, ask yourself, has this actually happened, or is my mind just making it up? 2. Act before you feel ready. Fear never fully goes away. You have to move forward despite it. 3. Reframe failure. Instead of thinking, what if I fail? Ask, what if I learn? Every successful person has failed more times than the average person has even tried. 4. Expose yourself to discomfort. The more you step outside your comfort zone, the more you realize fear is just a paper tiger. Adam let fear write his story. Daniel took the pen back. The only difference? One believed fear was real. The other saw it as an illusion. So ask yourself, how many dreams have you let fear kill? And how much longer will you let a hallucination control your life? Number 10. Will this matter in 5 years? The power of perspective. You're stuck in traffic, late for an important meeting. Your heart rate spikes, frustration bubbles, and you curse under your breath. Or maybe you sent a text and got left on read. Now your mind spirals, overanalyzing every word you wrote. Or you had a bad day at work, and suddenly you're questioning your entire career. But stop for a moment and ask yourself, will this matter in 5 years? Most people let small inconveniences wreck their mood, ruin their day, or make them doubt themselves. But the truth is, most problems are temporary. The things that stress you out today, the awkward conversation, the mistake at work, the minor embarrassment, will fade into irrelevance sooner than you think. Yet in the moment, they feel massive because we lack perspective. Marcus Aurelius understood this when he wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Strength comes from knowing what is worth your energy and what isn't. Take 2 people, David and Mark. Both get chewed out by their boss. David takes it personally, ruminates on it all night, and lets self-doubt creep in. Mark, on the other hand, asks himself, will this matter in 5 years? Probably not. So instead of wasting energy feeling bad, he focuses on improving. A year later, Mark has grown in his career. David, still stuck in his own head. The same applies to relationships. You overthink one bad date, one delayed response, one awkward moment. But in 5 years, will that single incident define your life? Highly unlikely. If it won't matter, then why let it ruin your peace now? So how do you apply this mindset? First, pause before reacting. When you feel stress building, ask yourself, is this truly significant, or am I making it bigger than it is? Second, compare it to past struggles. Think of things you once obsessed over that no longer matter. This situation will likely follow the same pattern. Third, prioritize what truly counts. Instead of focusing on petty frustrations, put your energy into long-term goals and meaningful experiences. David stayed stuck in the moment, drowning in short-term stress. Mark kept his focus on the bigger picture and thrived. The question is, will you let small problems steal years of your peace, or will you rise above them? Number 11. Practice gratitude. See beyond the surface. A janitor snaps at you for stepping on the freshly mopped floor. Instinctively, you feel irritated. Why is he so rude? But pause. What if you could see everything behind his reaction? Maybe he woke up at 4 a.m. to get to work. Maybe he's dealing with unpaid bills, a sick child, or exhaustion from working 2 jobs just to survive. Maybe his anger isn't about you at all, but about a life filled with struggles you will never know. Most people go through life reacting, complaining about inconveniences, stewing over minor irritations, getting frustrated at people without ever asking, what if I don't see the full picture? This is where gratitude becomes more than just a habit. It becomes a way of seeing. Seneca wrote, "True happiness is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence upon the future." Gratitude isn't just about being thankful. It's about recognizing what you already have instead of obsessing over what you lack. Most people chase happiness, thinking it exists in more money, more status, more approval. But happiness has always been in perspective. Gratitude in real life, the tale of two perspectives. Take James and Daniel. Both wake up to the same morning. Gray skies, heavy traffic, and a long workday ahead. James complains the entire time. Why does everything suck? Daniel, on the other hand, practices gratitude. He thinks, at least I have a car. At least I have a job. At least I get to drink coffee this morning. By the time they both arrive at work, James is exhausted from negativity. Daniel is energized by appreciation. Nothing in their environment was different. Only their mindset was. How to cultivate gratitude. 1. Write down 3 things you're grateful for every day. They don't have to be big. Clean water, a warm bed, a kind conversation. 2. Pause before reacting to negativity. If someone is rude, ask yourself, what might they be struggling with? 3. Express gratitude openly. Tell people you appreciate them. A simple thank you strengthens relationships. James focused on what was missing and lived in frustration. Daniel focused on what he had and lived in peace. Gratitude won't make life perfect, but it will make it clearer. The only question is, will you keep looking at what's missing, or will you finally see what's been there all along? Closing. Master your emotions. Master your life. The person who controls their emotions controls every aspect of their life. They don't react impulsively, they don't let fear dictate their decisions, and they don't allow anger or frustration to cloud their judgment. They move with purpose, respond with intention, and maintain their power in every situation. Stoicism doesn't teach you to suppress emotions, it teaches you to master them. It teaches you to feel without being ruled, to acknowledge without being controlled. The difference between those who succeed and those who stay stuck is simple. One trains their emotions, the other is a slave to them. So ask yourself, do you let your emotions run your life, or do you command them with discipline? Will you keep making excuses, blaming circumstances, and surrendering control, or will you take responsibility and sharpen your mind? The choice is always yours. Comment master your emotions if you refuse to let emotions control your destiny. Like, share, and subscribe to Victory Stoic if you're ready to take the next step toward unshakable strength and self-mastery.